That's cool. Those Office apps are really cool. They're worth playing with, and like, it's too bad to fit that into 30 minutes because really you could spend 8 hours on it, as a lot of these things are. What we're trying to do is, morning was kind of like, here's how all the parts, the basic building blocks. The afternoon, we're trying to show you a lot of cool things, and some of them will pique your interest, some might not, but it's good to just know what's out there, be aware of what's available. So, social apps. We're going to look at 2 things here. One is social authentication. So this is allowing people to log into your site without having to register for an account on your site, which is huge. Because how often do you browse around the internet and you want to go onto a site, you want to even just browse a forum or something like that, and they say, oh, you need to register. Like, forget that. First, I don't want to have to figure out what your stupid password policy rules are. I don't want to remember another password. I don't want to worry about your site getting hacked and losing my password or my email or all that stuff. Like, forget it, right? Do you guys do that? I do that all the time. Close the browser. I'm not dealing with it. So the idea of social authentication lets someone log into your website using Facebook, Google, etc. We'll look at those in a second. Also, then we're going to look a little deeper at Facebook development. So this is the idea where you can write an application that runs in Facebook, and you can write that application using MVC, actually specifically MVC 4. This is in the fall update. So when we're talking about social sites, this is an example. So these are sites that people use, right? You can use your Microsoft account, you can use a Google account, Facebook, all this stuff that people are used to using. Part of the reason that you can do this is because we have some protocols that actually work for this. So the 2 main ones, we have OAuth and OpenID. OpenID was kind of a first one, which said, this URL says who I am. And then OAuth is kind of more set up for sharing resources, but it's often used for a login. So the idea is somebody comes to your site and says, actually, the next one has more pretty pictures. Somebody comes to your site, says, I would like to log in. And then this delegates over to a login page not on your site. Say it's a Microsoft account, this is going to go over to live.com. Or if this is a Facebook account, login, it's going to go over to Facebook. And they're going to check the person, make sure they're logged in, and then all they do is they pass an access token back to your site. So then your site hears from Facebook and it says, this person is logged in, I'm going to vouch for them, trust me, because you've already set up your communication with Facebook or these other sites. So they can securely communicate back, the person is logged in and this is the information they're providing, that our system knows about them, right? So you don't need to worry about someone hacking your site. You don't have any passwords. You don't have any information stored, right? You can control that. So as an example, you can, for instance, here if you're setting up a Microsoft account, I've got this URL blown up here because it's hard to read in my browser. So this is manage.dev.live.com. And there we go. So when you go in, this is the kind of thing you see. And if I go in and click, create a new account, actually I think I have to do duplicate. So I can go in here and create a new account or a new app. I can create as many as I want. So I'll go into my apps and just say create a new app, and it gives me a key. And the reason is, again, you need to be able to. So here I'm creating create application. I give it an application name, and then it gives me some keys that says when you communicate to us, pass us these keys, and that's how we'll know that it's you. And we also want one more thing from you, which is that secure callback. It's got to be HTTPS. And so when you log into us, we're going to validate the user, and then we're going to bounce back to you on the secure login URL that you've told us about. So that's all I did for that. Then on Facebook, there's a Facebook developer site. It's developers.facebook.com. Same kind of thing. You go in, I click on apps. I say create an app. And then I do the same sorts. I have a URL that I say this is how you communicate back and forth with me, and it gives me these keys. So that's step one, is getting these accounts set up. Now, once we've got that, in this ASP.NET Fall 2012 update, which is a little hard to say, it needs a nickname, you know, like the Magic Unicorns or something. It needs so somebody come up with something. So I'm going to do a new MVC4 app, and I use this Facebook application. This is a new template. Actually, you don't need to do that. I'm getting ahead of myself. So there's two things I'm talking about. One, in a second, I'm going to be showing you is Facebook applications. But before that, there was actually, in MVC4, we had the ability, and MVC4 and ASP.NET 4.5, you have the ability to do OAuth login. So I'm just going to go and create an internet application. Sorry about that. So there's that app start folder, and that has all your configuration stuff. One of the folders, or one of the files in there is auth config. So we'll take a look at that. It's a very, very simple file. And this is all built using, Xinyang talked a little bit about some of this, but this is using .NET OpenAuth, which is a popular open source library. It's written by a Microsoft employee, but it's an open source project. So these are all these things. By default, you have to go in and turn these on. You have to say, I would like to, allow Facebook authentication, Google authentication, that kind of stuff. So I would go in. I had my keys from Facebook and Microsoft account. So I would go. I'm not going to fill those in because those require me actually deploying it to a server so that I have an HTTPS account, which actually, doesn't take that long, but we have 0 time. So the one that I am also, and I think I need to fill in some blanks. It doesn't validate these. You just have to have something. And so this will fail if we actually try and log in with them, but I'll be able to show you what it looks like. Now, the one that I don't need to register for is the Google account. Why is that? What's that? That is a good guess. Anyone else? Remember I talked about that there's 2 different protocols that this supports, OAuth and OpenID. OAuth is this thing where you actually register as an application, and you're registering with them, and there's this callback thing, and you two know about each other. OpenID is a different kind of system where you just say, I'm going to delegate responsibility for login to this site. And then you call back to me. And the other site, you don't have to register with them. So that's the difference here. And that's why with this Google account, I'm able to just say register Google account.
John, Google does support OAuth too, though.
They do.
Is
they
there
do
a
also.
mechanism to use the Google OAuth support?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I don't know about that. I just know when I was looking at this, I was like, why is that? And it was because it was making the OpenID call or connection. The answer has to be yes, because you can actually go in and hook up any OpenID provider or any OAuth provider. You just have to write a little bit of code. So it's actually not very much code. So here I've got on this login page. So there's still support for your traditional create an account, register, all that. I'm going to click on Google. So now it's redirecting my site over to Google. Google is saying, hey, this site wants to log in. Yes or no? And I'm going to tell them your email address. So good, that's fine with me. Now it came back, so Google has vouched for me and has given a token saying, this user whose email address is this, just logged in and they say that they want to log into your site. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to register, but not using my email address. Go like that. So now I've registered, and if we zoom in, that's actually not the best way to zoom in. So this is me. And if I click on that, then I can go in and create a new password. So I can associate multiple logins with this user, etc. So that's all that's required. And what they've really done is packaged up .NET OpenAuth library and made it so that it's easier to hook in with Microsoft or with the ASP.NET authentication. So any questions on that I can answer correctly? No? Okay. I think this is really cool. It's definitely something that makes, if you have a public site on the internet and you want people to register for your site, I think you'll see a lot more users actually registering if they don't have to create a password and go through all that rigmarole. So, and it also, if you're not storing passwords, you're not worrying about somebody stealing passwords from your database. So that is item number 1. Item number 2 then is creating applications. So they're creating Facebook applications. So more than just vouching for someone's identity, Facebook has a lot of information about, they call it an open graph, so, or a social graph. So they're able to say, yes, we can provide information about your identity, but your social graph also says who you're connected to and information about them. Gosh, yeah, so I'm going to skip that because I don't really know what it means. Now, so this Facebook graph or API, you call into it using a URL, and it gives you back JSON data. So it's just, it's JSON format. So actually, we can see this real quick. If I go to, okay. So here I have navigated, I'm doing this in Chrome because in IE, it tells you it wants you to download the JSON data, which may be more secure or something, I don't know. But so here I've browsed to graph.facebook.com/Microsoft. And this is actually open. This is on the open internet. It doesn't require any authentication. And this is giving me back JSON data. So this is telling me information, who its name is, the website URL, you know, the link to their Facebook profile, that kind of thing. So it's also possible with authentication, if somebody goes through the authentication steps, that you can get information about a specific user. So that requires authentication, but you can get richer information and connection information. So now, hop back over to these slides. Okay, so we're able to call a URL and get back JSON data, which is nice, but it's also a lot of work. You've got to do something to parse that JSON data. It's in a specific format. You need to go and read the documentation on the Facebook or developer pages if you want to, start using that. It's all doable, but it's time. So there's a Facebook C# SDK, which is a C# assembly, and it's available on NuGet, and it does all this stuff for you. So this is by actually a guy that Brady and I work with, Nathan Totten, and friends, and they had written a lot of Facebook applications, and they said, here's all the code we're writing over and over again, let's turn this into a library. So they've figured out a lot of the quirky odds and ends and exactly how to work with Facebook and interface correctly. So it handles that graph API I talked about, handles authentication, and supports tons of different frameworks. So what you're able to do with this then is you can just say var client equals, and then create it from that access token. So an access token is what you get after logging in. So this is same kind of OAuth type of login. And then after that, you're able to just work directly with that object. And yes. So we're putting some pieces together. Facebook provides a lot of information. OAuth lets us access that information securely. There's a C# SDK, which makes it easier to work with Facebook. So what would be even better, just a second, what would be even better is if we made a template, an ASP.NET template that made it so that we could just file a new project, Facebook, and this stuff is sort of wired up. Question?
Early days of Live ID, there was sort of this idea, it seemed to me, of restricting what they could or could not know, birth date or not, location or not. It seems that is sort of gone here now.
No, it's not. That's an excellent question. So the idea of, like progressive disclosure. Like, first of all, yes, I am this person. And then the app says, well, that's great, but in order to work on this part of the app, I need to know your email address, or I need to know your friends. So that's actually being added. That's available via Facebook. So you can say, I need to request more permissions, and that's supported by the Facebook C# SDK.
There's like a challenge action then that says this app wants your birth date or your location.
Right.
Do you allow it? That comes up automatically, or you have to code for those requests?
Let me show you.
Okay.
Yep. So I'll show you two things. I'll first show you that I know how to stop the slides from running. Okay, so remember that time when I did File New Project and it was the wrong thing to do? Well, now it's time to actually create that Facebook application. So in order to run this is in the fall update. So this is one of the new templates that's added. What this does is it brings in that .NET OpenAuth, or excuse me, it brings in the Facebook C# SDK, and it also, Nathan and the MVC team sat down, worked out together, here's how we can best integrate this in with MVC. So if you look in the home controller, we've got this Facebook authorize, and it has permissions email. So this is a simple case where this is saying, this controller action requires email permission. Okay? So two things. First, this is saying this user must be authorized by Facebook. Two, this user must have granted email permission. So you can put this Facebook authorize with different permission demands on different controller actions. So hopefully that answers your question. So a few nice things that this does. First of all, this is a controller action that's binding to a user type. So we'll go to definition on that. And this is binding to this is extending a Facebook user class. So a Facebook user class is a generic thing, and you can, if you want, you can write a controller action that just binds to a Facebook user. And then you can say Facebook user dot, and you see what's there. But you can also, if you know you want something, you can strongly type it in here. So you can say, I want an email, or I want a picture URL, and then you can provide more specifics. So, so this is an example of how you can have specific requirements, and this is kind of a basic File New Project experience. Let me show you two quick things that people have done with this. So one cool one is this thing called Birthday Manager. birthdayManager.azurewebsites.net. This is a guy, Yao, on the ASP.NET team. He's told me this took him about a day to do. So this was, the team they build applications as part of developing software to make sure that it works in the real world. So what just happened is I was already logged into Facebook. If I was not logged into Facebook, it would have said, you need to log in, and this application wants to know your friends, your list of friends. So this is an MVC4 application running in Azure Websites. It's hosted, so it's hosted on Azure Websites, but it's shown inside the Facebook frame. And what's neat here is say, I don't know, let me pick a friend that I want to buy something for. Brian Henderson. So he has a birthday in 13 days, and it says buy him a present. And actually now it's looking at things he's liked and saying, you might want to buy him this thing because he's liked it on Facebook. So this is an example. This actually, you hook up affiliate links on here, and you could actually make some money on something like this, right? Or it's actually kind of useful, too. And this is something that he built in a day. So pretty slick. So that is something where basically it said, Facebook user, get a list of friends. For those friends, go find, just does simple queries against or iterates through those friends. Another example here is, this is a slightly more advanced one. This is one showing, and actually I don't, I don't think I have this one set up. This will take some more setup. But this is something where, again, here, Facebook authorized, and it says, you know, I want this person's email and birthday. This is a place where you can have a specific redirect where you can say, if I demand more permissions later and the person doesn't give them, what do I do? So this is a place where you can handle specific I think it's demands. So a failed demand, then you can say, okay, I need birthdays in order to continue. You said no, so what do you want to do now? So that kind of thing. So you can smoothly handle that. And there's also something in here for support for real-time updates. So here actually, yeah, user real-time updates. So you can hook up real-time updates. This is actually not in the fall preview. This is in the next release of the... So the released fall preview that came out at Build doesn't have this. They've just added this in support for real-time. So this should be out in the next release of the fall preview. So really, I think that's about it. Let's see. I'll make sure I've covered all my demos here. So we saw the Facebook template, we saw the birthday manager, we saw a more advanced Facebook app, and we saw the Microsoft slide. Do we have any questions? I hope we have at least a couple questions.
John.
Yes.
So with the Facebook integration, we still have a user table. We still have our own users that we collect information on, but we just don't deal with authentication.
Well, that's an interesting question. So with a Facebook application, you do not have to manage any user stuff. So you can write in, like that birthday manager application does not have a user database. All it does is when you log in, it says, log in with Facebook. Okay, now for this Facebook user, go get their friends, go get their birthdays, do some math. You could, though, go in and save things locally if you want to, but you don't have to. So that's kind of nice. Now, as a side note, when you do OAuth login, we still have some sort of login locally. We have some sort of database because if I log into the site and then I log in 13 days later, using the same, say Gmail both times or Microsoft account both times, we want to be able to hook that user together and remember what they did last time and their stored settings and those sorts of things. So we actually have, it's kind of the ASP.NET membership. It's actually called Simple Membership, and then it's been extended to store that OAuth information, so it can hook those things together and remember them, but not specifically required for Facebook app. More questions? Anyone? Yes?
On the OpenID segment, you showed that we had to sort of get for our application a credential, a key. Is there something similar going with the OpenID? Do you have to associate your application somehow with a tokened key or something like that, or how does that go?
No, and so these things do get complicated pretty quick, and but OAuth does require those keys. You have to predefine, you have to register as an application with the provider. With OpenID, you do not. So with OpenID, all you do in the application is you say, this, I want to authenticate a user with this URL. And then the browser is redirected, the person logs in, it redirects back with a token and some information. It says, I vouch for this user, here's the information I'm going to provide about them, and that's done. So I've heard different descriptions of these. Maybe an OpenID is more like, here's my passport, right? And the government's given this to me and it says who I am, and when I come to Canada, they look at it, they look at the picture, they say, I trust this passport's valid, it's good enough for me. I didn't have to register with Canada to come here, right? But something more like with OAuth, then you're looking at like a valet key. So valet key is something where, you go and you drop off your car somewhere and you shake hands with the valet driver and he gives you a key, or excuse me, you give him a key that only lets him start up the car and drive the car to park it, but not open, say, your trunk and your glove compartment or whatever, right? So it's you're giving him some permissions to operate your vehicle.